Let me tell you guys about BellyUpSports. BellyUpSports is the internet sports bar. Go ahead and check out their website, www.bellyupsports.com, to read some great articles from great writers all across the country, from hockey, baseball, golf, soccer, you name it. BellyUpSports is the premier, not your average website. Premier League. And obviously this is where all the money comes in, but not for me. But because I don't get paid by these leagues. But yeah, I'm gonna say Premier League is weird this year. This is probably, and
Yeah,
I love
that's
it.
fair.
I love that it's weird. I love that how bizarre it is. I'm hoping Max is getting up there in your guys' standings for. I don't know what the challenge. I don't know what happened. Does loser have to do anything in that?
It's still to be determined. There's going to be a winner thing too, I think. But yeah, we kind of more importantly, man, it was just like there's like a whole inner debate about ball knowledge and this and that. So it's just keeping receipts.
I mean, fair enough. And you know, just yeah. No, I get that part. But start things off with the teams that are currently in relegation. We
Yeah,
have in 28th place Southampton with 5 points
yeah. The point. I mean, they're the worst team in the league. They are. I
by
mean, there's
far.
no. Yeah, it is what it is. Anybody who watched the Spurs game today knows. It was 5-0 at halftime. You have fans leaving the stadium at the 32nd, 35th minute, whenever it was. I can only imagine paying to go to a game, only seeing a third of it, and being so disgusted with what I saw that I'm out. So again, but I live here, not over there, so maybe it's different. But yeah, bro. I mean, they'll be the first team going back down, and I think they were in most fans' relegation predictions for this season anyway. You know,
Hmm.
could have seen them back up, cool, but it felt like Sheffield last season. Like it's inevitable, and we kind of know that they'll create some problems here and there for teams, but they're just probably gonna get dunked on. So it is what it is. The big surprise in the whole relegation zone is Wolves, by far. Like I think Gary O'Neill got sacked, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
Uh,
I believe they did sack them.
yeah,
They're currently in 19th place with only 9 points. It's
it's rough.
it's been interesting to see what's been going on with Wolves. I feel like their point total doesn't necessarily dictate how they've been playing because I've watched a few Wolves games. I mean obviously they're losing games. There's no sugarcoating it, but I mean I feel like their record isn't as I would. I'm not saying that this is like a mid-table team by any means. I mean, I think if you watch them play, you would be like maybe they're outside of the relegation zone, but they just haven't gotten the results their way, man. And that's just kind of what it comes down to with the Premier League. But yeah, Wolves, and it's not good when you lose when you fire your manager. I'm sure interim manager bump up and all that cool stuff, but
Yeah.
um, I think Nuno Espirito Santo is like a name that has been floating around to bring him back to Wolves. Which I'm actually I remember why he left Wolves because he took the Tottenham job, but and then obviously that didn't pan out. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, maybe they need to go back to being the Portuguese team.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I mean, he's at Forest, right? So it's like, I mean, that's a great position that he's got that team in. I think with Wolves, it's just considering where they left last season, it's rough, man. It's they were mid-table. They were a tough side to play against. They upset City last season with that crazy Chan goal. I think I don't know, man. I can't point to. I mean, I know why they're bad. Like they're bad simply because they just can't keep anybody at the back of the net. As bad as Southampton is, they've allowed 4 more goals over the course of the 16 games that have been played so far. 40 goals in 16 games is insane. Like you have to be fucking terrible to let in 40 goals in 16 games. Like that's if you can't keep anybody at the back of the net, it doesn't matter who you have up front to score, right? Like, I mean, and they have some ballers up front. Mateus Cunha, who I would love to see come to Arsenal because I think he's so versatile, despite whatever might happen on the disciplinary front. Mario Lamina, who in his own right was captain, just got stripped of that, by the way. That whole altercation at the end of the last game. So, and now I think Nelson Semedo, who's a decent right back, former Barcelona player. They got some ballers, man. But I think what happened to this team, and if I could pinpoint to one thing, it's defense, and probably a little bit caused by Kilman leaving. That center back leaving, and I think he went to West Ham. I want to say it was West Ham. Somebody correct me, if I'm
I
wrong.
mean, they had some significant losses. Obviously, I think who was the winger that went to Chelsea?
I mean, Neto.
Neto.
To be fair, with Wolves, I don't think he's major just because he was always fucking injured, man. He was more injury prone than I feel like Dembele was at Barcelona, and that is saying something.
Hmm.
Um, it's cool that he hasn't had to deal with that at Chelsea, but I expect that to be a problem at Chelsea too. I don't think he's magically going to get better.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, man. To me, they had the pieces under Gary O'Neill, a good manager. I still think he's a good manager. Just had a lot of bad luck. And to be fair, Wolves, I think it was like when the snowball started going, it was too hard to stop it. If you go look at it, I believe across the entire league, no one had a tougher schedule than them to open up. Like the
Oh
first
yeah.
2 months of the league was terrible for Wolves.
I mean,
Um,
I mean, you and me could probably attest to when with Arsenal when that one season where they immediately was like Liverpool, Manchester City just to kick off the season, and it was everyone's like, oh, this team is trash, and obviously Arsenal then goes on the run that they did after those results, and but it's not easy coming. It's a huge confidence killer. You have to start off your year so strong early on, and so it's not ideal. It's never how you want to kick off your season, but unfortunately, someone have like the raw end of the stick. Um, but yeah, no, Wolves that yeah, and then Ipswich Town. Obviously, they have made the long-awaited return to the Premier League. Everyone was excited to see this team. I think I think anybody was also wouldn't be surprised that this team was just up and down. Like it was just gonna
mhm.
happen for them. I don't think they're completely out just yet. I think that the relegation battle is going to be a lot closer than people think. I think there's like I mean, just to think about Leicester City, Everton, Crystal Palace, West Ham United, all teams with under 20 points that, if Ipswich Town could find some form, maybe take advantage of facing off against any of those teams, it could be a different tale for Ipswich and maybe they're able to stay afloat. But I think the relegation battle, specifically for that 18th place spot, it's something to keep an eye on for the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Ipswich, I mean, it's like they haven't been good, but they haven't been that bad either. They had
Hmm.
moments, right? So getting their first win at Spurs in the Premier League is also kind of hilarious. Um, but I think that like, good young players I kind of I think I picked them to narrowly avoid the relegation and get 17th. If they stay in 18th, I mean, it wouldn't be a terrible loss on that front either. But they got good young talents, man. If you haven't watched Ipswich, go watch them. Liam Delap, the striker, will probably move on at some point. Probably in the summer. I wouldn't be surprised. Whether it's going to, I think he's a Man City product, but whether it's going to Arsenal, going to Chelsea, I don't know if Arsenal keep it that low key on the striker front. I hope not, anyway. But other guys too, Omari Hutchinson, Jack Clark, like these are attackers that cause other big teams problems. So, Ipswich kind of doing what I think what everybody expected, maybe even outperforming expectations a little bit, just considering how bad guys like Wolves and Southampton have been so far. Could they overtake guys like Leicester City? Maybe Everton loses a little bit of form and drops down. I don't know. I think they're gonna be the ones kind of in that relegation battle. Genuinely going in and out of it as the season progresses, kind of how Luton Town was last season, and
Hmm.
ultimately Luton Town got relegated. But I still think there's a good chance that they have to hopefully stay up.
Yeah, exactly. And now the European competition is the Europa Conference League spot is currently with sixth place Aston Villa with 25 points. Um, the intriguing story now in that fifth place that's going to be the Europa League spot is Man City with 27 points, also coming off of a huge loss to Manchester United. Also one of those where it's like I don't know who's necessarily David and Goliath in this story because both teams desperately needed to win. When I saw Man City score the opener, I was like, okay, Man City is just gonna do their thing, and then Lord and behold, man, Bruno Fernandes, I believe Bruno Fernandes scored the first goal, and then uh, I don't remember the kid's name, but
Ahmad Diallo.
yeah, he just puts it in, and yeah, man, the theater of dreams, bro. Just
It's
What
crazy,
a
man. Yeah,
what a
that game.
performance.
Yeah, what a performance. Amad Diallo had a great performance. But I feel like I've been saying this forever, man. Like probably since like the first month of the season, I think I was saying Ahmad to me is the one attacker that has to start every game. Like if you have to pick one, it shouldn't be Garnacho, shouldn't be Rashford. Doesn't even have to be Hoyland necessarily, depending. Although I think Hoyland has now made a case why he should always try to be the starting striker. Um, Definitely doesn't have to be Mount. Doesn't have to even be Bruno. I think Amad Diallo is the one attacker you absolutely have to start every game. I know he has a little bit of an injury problem too, but like Garnacho, Rashford, bro, rightfully dropped for the game today, and not benched, like dropped entirely from the roster. I do think those are two players that United for Rashford should be okay with letting go of, and with Garnacho's case, could be okay with letting go of. Like, he's 20 years old, man. I think he's like how I don't know how long we're gonna give him the benefit of the doubt on the age thing in terms of being able to see his potential. I think he's a good young talent, but I don't think he's this revolutionary winger. I think his stock is decently high. I think United could potentially sell him and get someone who, fuck, I don't know, is going to be a better fit under Amorim. But anyway, discussion for another day. Uh, Performance was good, man. Like at least in the ways that you want United to be good, which right now is just trying for everything. It's kind of sad that it's where the fucking bar is right now, but trying for everything, putting 110% effort in, and just buying into Amorim's system and trying to execute the best you can. And that's what happened today, bro. That and City are in shambles.
So you kind of were comparing Real Madrid to Man City, but obviously you said Man City's significantly worse than Real Madrid's situation.
Oh fuck
Um,
yeah.
could you kind of elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, what is it about Man City that they are just like the meme, which is a very graphic meme that I wish I didn't see on Twitter, which was just everybody taking a turn with Man City. Um,
Mm,
Once again, Twitter has become,
interesting.
if it's not soccer, for some reason I just get a lot of porn, and I'm trying to figure out how to get that off because I have my nieces around a lot, and that's not something that I have in my algorithm. I have never searched porn on Twitter.
It's just being a dude, bro.
Just being a dude.
Just being a dude on a life, day in the life of of a dude on Twitter. Yeah, man. So City's not well. City, I've been saying for all these weeks they're not in crisis mode yet. I think now losing this game, you kind of do cement it a little bit, right? You can take it with a grain of salt, sure. But what I mean by the comparison I made earlier is that Pep still seems to be, despite all of this, despite only having one win in the last 11, he's still relying on the same talents and the same like gut instinct, if you will, that he's been relying upon all season. Hasn't really changed it at all. The personnel haven't changed all that much. Kyle Walker is still somehow on the fucking field, and they just keep losing. It's like he's gonna go down his way too. He's not gonna try and adjust. Like he's just gonna be himself and will go down with the ship, so to speak. And in some ways, I guess that's respectable. Like I'm sure Ange from Spurs would be fucking proud because he's done the same thing literally in so many games, last season and this one. But yeah, man, it's they're just in a really interesting place. I've said this before on our own show. I think City right now is just kind of realizing that it has somewhat of a recruitment issue, a recruitment problem. I think they had a fantastic run, if you will, of just serial championships. But the players that have carried them are still being heavily relied upon to carry them, and the talent they brought in to supplement that group really isn't all that great. Mateus Nunez, not all that great. Kovacic, good, but has more than a few average games. Gundogan's level has dropped off fucking entirely. Bernardo Silva's level has dropped off significantly. Foden is a ghost of his previous year self. Like player of the year, Foden is gone. I have no idea where the fuck he is. De Bruyne has just slowed down with age. I mean, it is what it is. And Holland can't get service from the players around him. Like, there's just so much wrong going on. And then the back line, Kyle Walker's not what he used to be anymore. It was a pace merchant before. The pace is kind of gone. Diaz is making stupid fouls. Kanji, same shit. Rico Lewis might be the only one playing like halfway decently,
Hmm.
in my opinion. So there's just a lot going on with City where it's like with Real Madrid before, right? It's like you just don't have that many problems. Mbappe and Ancelotti are probably your biggest issues. Chouameni hasn't been the greatest this season, and injuries. But outside of that, like if you guys again just shift the thinking, you can fix this problem. City, I don't know where you start. And then you had the looming verdict of like 130 charges now, not 15, 130 charges, right? The case is done, and now we're going to find out what happens to that. So I don't know, man. Pep got extended. If I were him, I would seriously be contemplating what happens if I get fired and how much money I make because he did extend his contract. They got to pay it out if they fire him. So we're on that territory now. If any other manager, if this had happened to any other manager, they would have been let go. It only hasn't happened yet because it's Pep.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the fact that they haven't essentially kind of reloaded this team. Like, the difference of teams that have to rebuild is because they kept their players for way too long that they needed to, and they didn't necessarily essentially reload it. Kovacic is not a guy you reload with. Like if you're gonna be that team that goes and splurges the money and says fuck financial fair play, you got to go and try to get those guys that fit to what Pep wants to do and keep this team. This midfield is not the same midfield from when they won the Champions League. The players just in general, there's just not the same team. You should have been replenishing the team, and unfortunately they didn't do it. I think which is weird because I mean they had no problem moving on for Sergio Aguero. They had no problem moving on from many players that gave them their first titles. But something about this period of Man City, and I think that's also kind of something that happened with Real Madrid too, to a fault as well as they were just so loyal to that team, that midfield of Casemiro and Cruz and Modric, that you kept those Camavinga and Valverde and them on the wayside. Luckily, they stayed very patient, and I think the midfield is still not as bad as some Real Madrid fans have complained about. Like I mean, if that's your concern, I'm more concerned of Mbappe still trying to figure out his role when we're half a season in. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think yeah, like you mentioned, Man City is in a really peculiar situation, and I think if it was any other manager, he'd be given the door. But it's Pep Guardiola, the guy that the true mastermind of all things, and so. Um, but like as far as you can tell, like what do you expect to see in that second half of the season for Man City?
Um, Probably a little bit more of the same. Like whether City fans want to accept it or not, they're in a top four to maybe top six race this season. I think that's okay. Like this team's been operating at such a high level for such a long time that they've literally gotten fans like myself to start calling the Premier League a farmers league, which it kind of has been, bro. Like it's like fucking the 2000 or the 2010s Bundesliga. Like it's just Bayern winning every year, or same era for Juventus in the Serie A, just Juve winning every year. That's what the Premier League had become. It's just City winning every single year. One year Liverpool might win it, a couple years, Arsenal might challenge them, but in reality, it's just City's league. You know, these are humans, bro. Like they're gonna drop off at some point. It's just unfortunate for City fans that it all came crashing down at one moment and it wasn't gradual. But at least now we can all see like what the gaps are. And I'll be honest, man, that midfield is fucking atrocious. Like it just needs to be overhauled entirely. And maybe that's why they extended Pep, to like give him a little bit more time to do that because the midfield that's been brought in just isn't good enough. But I think the second half of the season, I don't know, man. I think you're looking at probably a fourth place finish, I would say. Fourth, but it wouldn't surprise me if somehow Forest tries to keep things interesting. If Villa gets back to what we know them to be, they've also been a shell of themselves. Villa's been so fucking disappointing. The game against Forest this past weekend sums them up perfectly. Ton of potential, ton of opportunity, maybe a little bit of controversy, but somehow still fucking throw the game away against Forest. Um, at home, I believe too. I believe it was at home. But yeah, I mean, I think City, just because I expect Arsenal to still find another gear after the holiday. They always do. They've done it the last 2 years. If they didn't this year, I'd be surprised. Chelsea is probably the best offensively flowing team, and then you have Liverpool who's leading everything. So City probably have to finish fourth.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you already mentioned the teams, but fourth place, Nottingham Forest with 28 points. You mentioned Arsenal in third with 30, Chelsea in second place with 34. I mean, can't make fun of young Kip anymore. And of course, in first place, Liverpool with 36 points. A team that lost their manager, Jurgen Klopp, obviously for mental, wanted to take a break for mental reasons, and I believe he has like a little role right now with RB Leipzig,
Yeah. Well,
not
Red Bull Group in general.
Red Bull Group. So that sounds fun. But I mean, obviously he's not going to stay away from the game. But he's not coaching, and at least not dealing with the stresses of coaching. But you bring in an Arnie Slot, and most people, if you're a Manchester United fan, you're like, oh, those Eredivisie guys, they don't work out. And this guy who made almost, I don't even think any sort of signing for Liverpool, and if they did, I didn't pay attention. Um, Darwin Nunez gets benched. At least I feel like he's been getting. I haven't
Yeah,
seen him,
he's hard bench, bro. I mean, at least in my opinion, he definitely favors Jota.
and this team is pretty good. Um, and I mean, even in the Champions League, fairly solid. I mean, maybe the guy that knew how to coach Feyenoord, that also dethroned Ajax, maybe that guy was the guy that that people should have been paying more attention to, not a certain other bald Dutch guy. But but yeah, man. But before what do you think about Liverpool? Where did you even think Liverpool would be in this position going into the season?
No, well, not that they wouldn't be in this position. I thought it'd be difficult. So when the season started, I had Liverpool finishing third. A lot of
Did
people saw a big drop off.
did you
I was
did you feel like there'd be like an adjustment period?
kind of because it's a big legendary manager, and then historically, right in the Premier League, when big legendary leaders leave, exit, there's just always a gap. You know, when Wenger left, and then when Emery took over, he got fired within 8 months. Fergie, they've been waiting like over a decade, and they still haven't replaced that dude. Like it just there's always something, right? So you have to account for that, and Liverpool's history, that's the case too. Um, but I do still also think that Liverpool were arguably the best team in the Premier League, even as recently as last season. Like you got to remember, Liverpool controlled the Premier League title race up until April last year, right? And then Arsenal and City were able to just stay more consistent in the final stretch of the season, and it came down to the last day. But Liverpool had the lead. At January, they were like 8 points clear or some shit like that, 5 or 8 points clear. So, Klopp left a good team in Arne Slot's hands. The only hole I saw on the pitch, to be honest, was defensive mid. Is the only hole that I really saw. And I did think that their contract scenarios would pose to be issues at some point. And I still believe that. But at the end of the day, like the most impressive thing Arne Slot has done is two things. One is turn Ryan Gravenberch back into his normal position. He was kind of at a defensive pivot at Ajax. He's doing that again. And we're seeing now, we kind of all forgot, but we're seeing now how good he's at position. But the other thing is that he's given Liverpool more control. That's the reason why that they are performing the way they're performing. It's not the most impressive performances, right? It's like they can play free flowing football. It reminds me of Arsenal, like even last season, right? Like they could play free flowing football, and when they're on and they're attacking at full threat, like very few teams can stop them. But they play for control and they wait for their opportunities. Klopp's Liverpool never did that. Klopp's Liverpool was so fun to watch as a neutral because as soon as he got the ball, he took off as fast as he fucking could to the other side of the pitch, and he had the players to do it amongst Mane, Firmino, Salah. So Liverpool has they have more control now, and they're controlling games, and that's what makes them really scary for this season if they can keep it going. Salah feels inevitable. The guy's honestly, man, he's having a fucking Ballon d'Or season. Let's just say it now. He's having a Ballon d'Or season. If he keeps his shit going into the second half of the year, I don't know, man. Between him and Lamine Yamal and like Rafinha, and Jude might get his numbers back up. Like next year's Ballon d'Or race might be crazy. But
And then also no international competition that could
yeah, it's just purely
hurt his
club
stock.
ball, bro. If Liverpool goes deep, like I'm telling you, man, they might get a Ballon d'Or winner back at Anfield. But the thing is, like I said, the one thing that will pose a massive threat to this title charge is the contract situation. Okay. If Virgil resigns, cool. If I don't expect Trent to resign, I think Trent's gone, in my opinion. I think Trent's gone. I think either the lure of Real Madrid or Barcelona is too big, and he's been there his whole life. I think he just wants something new. All young people want that at some point. So I think he's gone, but I think even if he does, Connor Bradley's still there and a pretty viable right back, in my opinion. I think it's always reinforced. The other one is the big one is Salah. I don't know how you replace that man. They can have every attacker they have right now, and I don't think anybody actually replaces him. Not Gakpo, not Chiesa, who they did sign and is probably going to ship back to Italy at some point.
Oh
Um,
man, I forgot that case was there.
yeah, he was the signing. He was the one signing they had this summer for next to nothing. It was like 9 or 14 million or something, and he's done nothing. Like I think he suited up like once for Liverpool. Um, so it's a good team. I mean, it's a good team. I wonder how durable they'll last, and just as long as the contracts are somewhat of a distraction, I'm wondering how long Arne Slot can deal with it, like before it gets annoying and becomes too much in the media.
And I think that would be the big club manager moment that I think we'll see for Arne Slot because I mean for Feyenoord and the Eredivisie, that's a big club, but we're talking about Liverpool big, and that's worldwide. Like everyone in the world, there's a ton of Liverpool fans everywhere. Like, and so I think that you mentioned that. I think that that's where we're gonna see like when this is how we'll define Arne Slot's first year with Liverpool. Because yes, it was very much just steer the ship. You got the tools that you needed already on your arsenal, so you're fine. It's just making sure you put them in their right place. And I think he's done a fairly good job with that. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting storyline to follow with Liverpool is how who they keep from those three players that you mentioned. And I think it'll be I think positively if you're able to get Mo Salah, I think Mo Salah is probably the priority amongst the fans to keep. Um, Virgil van Dijk, I think some may. I mean, I'm sure everyone wants to keep Virgil van Dijk, but I don't think he's the same Van Dijk from years before, if that makes any sense. And
Yeah.
Trent Alexander-Arnold, I don't think that there's like a lot of people that are, fighting for him to stay on the team. Um, but they wouldn't say no to him staying at the same time. But yeah, I think Liverpool is an interesting story. I kind of want to see how they pan out in the second half. I think that's how we're gonna learn a little bit more about Arne Slot now that everybody got an idea of Arne Slot ball.
Hmm.
So I think that second half is going to be very telling from Liverpool. Um, all right, second place Chelsea or third place Arsenal. Which one you want to tackle first?
Um, I'll do Arsenal. I think Chelsea's very straightforward. At the end of the day, Arsenal is they're man, the title race isn't over yet, but the margins are dangerously close. And that's how I feel about this Arsenal team. I think they're the one team in the top four race that has to reinforce in January. I really don't believe that any other team has to. City probably does to maybe stop the bleeding. Like they could use a defensive mid to be Rodgers' replacement, but like Arsenal to give them another edge, they need an attacker, and not just any attacker, one that's versatile enough to play ideally either left winger or striker. Because this team, man, is they'll control a lot of games. I mean, we saw it against Everton this past weekend. They controlled the whole damn game, but just not have enough cutting edge and X factor at the end of the day to convert even the scrappy chances. Right? That's what they were. A lot of those chances were just scrappy chances. Some of them were good saves by Pickford, but for the most part, it just perfectly epitomized Arsenal. They won't let up a goal. They'll control the whole damn game, but still not get the full 3 points and get the game over the line. Saka can only do so much with this team. So I think they need someone else, someone on the left who's going to legitimately, basically, as much as I love Martinelli and Trossard, push them aside, own the position, and just not be afraid to go at opponents and defenders and open up opportunities for other players around them. That's what we need. Odegaard and Saka can't do it by themselves. But Arsenal right now is a good team, not a great one. Despite what they're doing in Champions League, man. Champions League, they're third in that fucking Super League table. Um, and I don't think it's an accident. I really think they've been that good in Champions League. I just think teams play them different. That's where we're at in the whole cycle of Arteta right now, man. Like we're just beholden in the league anyway to how teams play against us. And that's what it's going to be. Like, if they set up the way Sean Dyche set up with Everton, it's going to be difficult. We don't have the player with the X factor to help us break down low blocks or just score something out of nothing. Like, we don't have that guy. Saka sometimes, but even then, he just can't do it by himself when he's double or triple covered. So we need that. And I think with, I don't know, you look at other teams, they have that. Liverpool has that in Salah.
Who's that player in January you think Arsenal should be going after?
Man, it's if I had to pick a realistic scenario, I'm gonna go as far as, and shout out Max because I think he kind of planted the seed a little bit, but I think it makes a whole lot of sense. Um, I think it's Kolo Muani potentially, and I say that because he's just fallen out of favor entirely with PSG. This is someone that I think with the right players around him, we could get a lot from, and will the price tag will be right because he's fallen out. We'll either get him for a short term loan with like a buy option for next to nothing loan fee or and wages covered, or we get him for a next to nothing transfer fee because Luis Enrique just wants him out.
Which is a very on point Arsenal.
Yeah,
uh,
it is. It's what I'm saying. It's so on brand with Arsenal, but the ceiling with this player is there. Like we've seen it. He's literally started in a World Cup final. Like he has the intangibles. It's just can we get the best out of him in a 6 month period, and then is he a viable long term option after that? Right? Like that's all that is to be determined. But the player I would want us to get, like Acuna from Wolves, I think he's someone who could play a striker. He could be a 10. He could be a left winger. Like someone like him or like Alexander Isak is probably the dream signing. Like a forward that can bang it from anywhere. He knows how to play left wing. Very Thierry Henry esque with his movements, even with his finishing to an extent. Like like that's the dream attacker signing. But I would definitely settle for Acuna, for a Mohamed Kudus, or like I mentioned, the most realistic, I think, if we're smart about it, Colomwani.
Yeah, I actually like that you mentioned Koulibaly. That's a guy that I was fairly high on. I think it's crazy that PSG like I don't like sometimes I just don't know what Louis but then again I can't say anything. They're fucking undefeated right now. But which I mean it's Liga. But still like yeah, I think that I think for him just a change of scenery I think I don't know when, but Arsenal just became one of the most healthiest cultures now in the Premier League too. And maybe it's because that the young players that are on that team, and just now that everybody, you have players there that are happy to be there and want to be there, which is very much a 180 from years before. And so I think that that's also a positive, and I think that could be very helpful for Koulibaly. And I think even for like Kai Havertz could be like a good example of that as well. Like, from the dumpster fire that was Chelsea and to come here. Um, Maybe not necessarily the best player to use as an example, but still, I mean, has come up big for Arsenal in its moment as well. So I think Koulibaly, I think that's and the way you presented that one, I was like, this is very on point for Arsenal. I mean, that's exactly how they got Odegaard. Like,
Yeah, no,
this,
it's the same thing, right? It's like they'll make calculated bets, the club will, and it's going to lead to again a signing that feels like a smart signing with a lot of room for potential, and that's not even just like Odegaard. That's Fabio Vieira before we sent him back. That's even I guess you could say to an extent like low risk opportunities like Raheem Sterling, which that hasn't really panned out. I don't even know if it will, but yeah, I think with Colomwani, it is a shame. He started only 2 of the 10 games, that they've played. And, I mean, he's got hardly any minutes this season. He's 26. Like, bring him over. I mean, I personally, I know he's got experience on the wing. I don't know how much. I've seen most of his play at striker. But even then, I'd be down to push Kai to the limit and let's just see what happens. But if we don't, go on to win the title this season, because again, it is still a long shot with Liverpool playing the way they are. I think we need to see Arsenal winning some kind of silverware this season. Has to happen. I would be over the fucking moon if it was a Champions League, but it probably won't be. So I feel like a good FA Cup run, a good Carabao Cup run, get some kind of silverware, get some good experience under the belt in the final, and then we'll reinforce and then get ready to go again next season. But we'll find out. Arsenal to
I
me are
agree
still in a
with
good
that.
position.
I agree with that. I think last year where we didn't get a trophy out of anything, and we had to watch Manchester United win the fucking FA Cup pissed me off more than anything else, just because even though once again, fuck Manchester City, they shouldn't. It's I was rooting for Manchester United to win that game, but
Yeah.
then as soon as I realized Manchester United was lifting that trophy, and we were just having the year that we were like, oh man, Arsenal, they can finally be doing something, and we come out empty handed. And to that person, they say, "What about the community shield? Go fuck yourself."
Yeah, seriously.
I don't want to hear anything about that stupid trophy, especially after all those fucking Madridistas attacking, calling me a Barca fan because I said the Spanish Super Cup. No one gives a shit about that trophy. Um, and then all of a sudden, I'm a Barca fan. All of a sudden, I'm a fucking Messi. I was like, you know what, Jose, I get it. I get it. I fucking get why you guys complained about Madridistas as much.
Yeah, it's rough, bro. Yeah, fuck that community shield. I don't care. Like there were Arsenal fans who were happy, or like trolling City fans. I'm like, you guys are the reason why we're the laughing stock at the end of the season. Like we just need to keep our eyes on the prize. And I think look, I won't be mad, and I won't be I swear to God, I'm calling it now. If we don't win anything this season, I'm not gonna be calling Arteta out whatsoever. You couldn't pay me to say that shit. I don't see another manager that could take this specific group of players and do more with them than what we're doing now. So I still think he's the right guy. We just again got to add a few more reinforcements because it is what it is. We need more experience. But Arsenal will be in the title race and until they're not, but they're still there. And Chelsea, man, the biggest shock. I mean, of the top four, I had Chelsea finishing like sixth, I think, sixth or seventh, based on where they kind of finished last year. They finished sixth again, but new manager coming in, about 150 players to deal with and try and sift through, making 11 out of. I think Enzo's been very, very direct,
With the
and
drama that is allegedly Enzo was bringing in as
yeah,
well.
bro, all kinds of shit. Like it just sounded like a nightmare to deal with as a new manager while still trying to make this team competitive. And yet he's done it to an extent. Now he's got some great players on his hands, and the transfers he brought in this season seem to have worked even that much, right? Like Jade and Sancho's been halfway decent at times for sure. Neto's had his moments and looking good. Um, shit, the only ones
Also
that aren't
healthier
looking
than
good.
usual.
Yeah, yeah. Cole Palmer is still doing Cole Palmer things. I think he's still kind of pretty damn consistent against the big six, but nonetheless, the team around him seems to step things up when the time is right. So Chelsea are in a title race, bro. I don't know how long it'll last. It kind of feels a little bit like Arsenal in their first title race recently, like a couple years ago, a few years ago. Like it feels like that. Like yeah, they're probably in the race. We can say they're in the race, but do we feel like they realistically can keep up with not just Liverpool, but let's say Arsenal figure it out. Let's say City come back. Can they just deal with that? I don't know. I think top four is very viable for them, but as of right now, I mean they're in second firmly. So yeah, man, surprising everybody in a good way, I guess.
Yeah, I think going into this year, I thought Chelsea was just gonna stay being the dumpster fire that it is. And it's not like it's not like they're set on this in this standing table because the second half things can happen, right? You know, you mentioned earlier about Pedro Neto's like injury history. Um, I'm not rooting for injuries by any means, but I'm just saying like the second half of the season could be very telling of what exactly we're gonna get from this Chelsea team. I mean, point blank, they spent a lot of money on this team, and when you spend a lot of money, you should be getting some sort of result out of it. And maybe it was just the coach. Maybe what maybe it was Tuchel. Maybe it was all the guys before they got to this point. And I mean, yeah, like we probably said it plenty of times, like coaching does make a big difference. It makes a huge difference. I mean,
Yep.
talking about Arteta, like I mean, it was like night and day from the time of Emery to now him, taking over. It's completely different. Um,
Bro, you know what's crazy about that? Like, think about this. Like, look at what Pep is going through right now. Fucking scratching up his head and like doing all kinds of other crazy shit, stressed beyond belief with this group of what many would consider to be world-class talent. How do you think he would have been or reacted with what Arteta came into with Arsenal? Like, could you fucking imagine if he had to deal with like getting that much deadwood out? Like, I think so many Arsenal fans just forget about that, man. They just when they think about like whether or not Arteta should be here or not, they forget where we were just like
like
4 or 5 seasons ago.
having to sell yourself on the idea that Hector Bellerin is the guy.
Not
Like
even just him, bro. Like there were so many. David Luiz, like yeah, fuck it, William. Let's just sign him, bro. Like he'll be the same as he was at
man,
Chelsea. Fuck it.
I want to forget all about those signings, but
Yeah, bro. Aubameyang carried this team for so long, man. So long. Like and then that whole situation, dude, the drama with that, right? Like getting him out, like doing all those things. Like I think that's had it rough. And like everybody just acts like He's just been given this war chest of cash, like what Pep has been given his entire time at fucking City, and just say, all right, go win us titles. And it's shocking to everyone that he hasn't. Like, guys, come on, man. Like, think back, use your brains, and just remember where we were.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about like that roster in general. Just Nicolas Pepe, you know, all the just like the boneheaded decisions that you had to like sell yourself on. That you're like this might be the guy, like Lucas Torreira. I was so high on him. I don't know why I
Same.
was, but I was
He was
like,
a
oh
dog, bro. Yeah, he
yeah,
was a
he was a
dog.
dog. He was a
Yeah.
dog, and I was just like, all right, this is our six, and he wasn't happy, and we heard all the drama that came from that guy. I was just like, Jesus Christ, I can't, we can't catch a break with anything. I remember there was a point where I was selling myself on the idea of Danny Ceballos, and I was
Oh my God.
just, I had to hype
Uh
myself up every year on one of these guys being the guy, and it was just like,
yeah, him, Guendouzi, like there's so many random dudes that we had so much hope for. And like I think again, fans don't realize that, right? Like we're still kind of operating the same way. Like we're like Mikel Arteta is still making younger player signings than as opposed to just splashing cash and going out and getting world-class stars. It's just the difference now is it's working, right? Because we have an identity, we have a true system, a manner in which we want to play. Does he get everything right? No. But he gets a hell of a lot more right than he gets wrong. And I think the stuff he gets wrong, he's still technically, he is in his first managerial position as a first team manager. Like he will get better. And I don't think we'll find a manager, like I said, who's doing better than what Arteta's doing now, and definitely won't get one that cares as much about making Arsenal great again as it's not kind of Trump-ish to an extent, but making Arsenal great again as Arteta does. Like he legitimately wants Arsenal to be fucking, winning everything, right? And I don't. He cares so much deeply about the club, so much that he wants the culture to shift. I don't know if there's another manager right now who would do that.
yeah, exactly. Obviously, I already mentioned the relegation battle being the story to keep an eye on, at least for me, for the second half of the season. But what is a team or maybe a battle that you're kind of intrigued on for the second half of the season?
Man, you know what, bro? The sixth place spot, basically the Europa League spots, right, and Conference League spots. Those are the ones outside top four that are super fucking interesting. Because keep in mind, right, Forest might drop off, right, from being top four right now. That's expected. I think they're overperforming. But what's going to be the drop off realistically for them? Uh, it could be sixth, could be seventh. Bournemouth under Iraola still look like a pretty damn good team. Evan Nelson's still proving to be a pretty decent striker for them. And bro, Villa is one of the most infuriating teams in the league, hands down. They're the only team in the top half of the table, I think, that has a negative goal differential. This is a Champions League team. We're halfway through the season, and they're the only team in the top half that has a negative goal differential. They're just so up and down, man. So up and down. Like they play so well against the big teams, and they just shit the bed against teams that they should be. And even when they have prolific moments, like this past week against Forest, John Duran's goal was fantastic. Fucking beautiful header. But in the last 20 minutes, they capitulate and they give away 2 goals to Forest, and Forest wins. It's just, I don't know what to expect with this team. But then you layer on Fulham being good, Brighton being good, Spurs are down there, Brentford's having a better season than they've had in I don't know how many seasons. Dude, those European spots are up for grabs, and there's like 2 points separating all those teams that I just mentioned. So it's going to be wild.
Yeah, that's a good one to mention also. I mean, Premier League, this has been a weird season for the Premier League. Man City finally, hopefully, going to be dethroned, and I'm looking for some wood to knock on because they do their things, and that's all I'm going to say for that part.
Yep.
Uh, um, but it has been a bizarre year.